Nothing says your marriage is over quite like watching your husband sprint into a maternity ward with flowers while you're busy convincing a nurse that your mother's stubbed toe isn't actually gangrene. And yet, there I was, standing in the fluorescent purgatory of St. Francis Medical Center on a Tuesday afternoon, witnessing the end of my 15-year marriage between vending machine coffee sips. "The baby of that gentleman was born this morning," chirped the receptionist, smacking her gum like it had personally offended her. Behind me, my mother Vivian was performing her Oscar-worthy rendition of "Woman Convinced Her Minor Ailment is Terminal," while in front of me my reality was shattering faster than my mother's faith in WebMD's accuracy. I'm Sylvie Paxton, 39, mild-mannered librarian at Fairview Public Library, and apparently the last person in Fairview, Illinois, to discover that my husband Dexter, 42, regional sales manager at Midwest Paper Supply, had been busy creating inventory I knew nothing about. When I married Dexter in the summer of 2010, I thought I was signing up for book club discussions and arguing over whose turn it was to clean the coffee maker, not standing frozen in a hospital hallway, watching him parade around with a teddy bear that cost more than he'd ever spent on my birthday gifts. The teddy bear was wearing a "Daddy's Little Princess" t-shirt, subtle as a tornado in a trailer park. My mother chose that exact moment to escalate her performance. "Sylvie, tell them my toe is turning black. Black! That's the first sign of death approaching." "Mom, it's a bruise from dropping your Kindle on it," I replied without taking my eyes off Dexter, who was now accepting congratulatory handshakes from a doctor. A doctor? Like he'd done any of the work. Vivian Baker, 67, retired drama teacher, both professionally and personally, had moved in with us temporarily after her divorce 5 years ago. That temporary situation had outlasted 3 presidential administrations and my patience. Today's emergency was her third this month, following the suspicious mole, chocolate, and the heart attack, heartburn from her secret midnight hot pocket. "Are you sure that's your husband?" asked the receptionist, leaning forward to get a better look at my personal Greek tragedy unfolding in the maternity ward corridor. "Unless he has an identical twin who also wears the custom tie I gave him for our anniversary last month, then yes, that's definitely my husband," I replied, the words tasting bitter as day-old break room coffee. The Fairview rumor mill would be working overtime tonight. In a town where the most exciting event last year was the grocery store adding a sushi section, my husband's secret baby would fuel PTA gossip until at least next Easter. I had options. I could confront him right there, creating a scene that would give my mother's dramatics a run for their money. I could slink away, pretend I never saw him, and cry into a pint of Ben & Jerry's while Googling how to discreetly poison a cheating spouse, for research purposes only, of course. Or I could do what any self-respecting, underestimated librarian would do: gather evidence, formulate a plan, and execute it with the precision of alphabetically shelving the entire fiction section. I chose option 3. "Mom," I said, turning to Vivian, who was now showing her toe to a deeply uncomfortable janitor, "your toe needs specialized treatment. Very specialized. Let's go to the urgent care center across town." "But we just got here," she protested, clutching her purse like I'd suggested abandoning a child. "Trust me," I said, guiding her toward the exit while snapping a quick photo of Dexter and his baby gift. "I have a feeling the medical care will be much better elsewhere." Vivian grumbled all the way to the car about healthcare these days and how, in my time, doctors actually cared about gangrene. I nodded absently, my mind calculating faster than a Costco cashier on Black Friday. Dexter had been working late a lot over the past couple of years. His business trips to Springfield had increased. He'd been secretive with his phone. Classic cheating behavior that I'd willfully ignored because after 15 years, complacency had become our third roommate. As I drove to the urgent care center, which actually was better than the overloaded ER for my mother's imaginary emergency, I mentally reviewed our joint accounts, the deed to our house, and the evidence I would need to ensure Dexter's life imploded as spectacularly as he deserved. "You're smiling weirdly," Vivian observed, momentarily distracted from her toe crisis. "Did you get one of those brain parasites from the hospital? I saw a documentary about those. They make you smile right before you collapse." I'm fine, Mom. Just thinking about a book I'm reading. Must be a murder mystery, she muttered. If only she knew how close she was to the truth. 3 hours and 1. It's definitely just a bruise diagnosis later. I dropped my mother at our house with strict instructions to elevate her foot and watch her crime shows. Then, instead of heading back to work, I drove to Midwest Paper Supply's office park. Dexter's assistant Fern has always liked me better than him, possibly because I remember her birthday, and he still calls her Fran after 8 years. Sylvie, what a surprise! Fern beamed when I walked in with a box of her favorite cookies from the bakery downtown. Dexter's not here. Doctor's appointment, I think. Doctor's appointment. Right. I smiled, channeling my inner Stepford wife. Actually, I need a favor that might make you uncomfortable. Fern leaned forward, eyes sparkling. In a small town, being part of someone else's drama was better than Netflix. I'm listening. By the time I left Midwest Paper Supply 15 minutes later, I had copies of Dexter's calendar for the past year, his expense reports, and most importantly, the Springfield client addresses he'd been visiting so regularly. Except there was no Springfield client. According to Fern, who was delighted to blow up my husband's spot, Dexter had been logging mileage to Springfield, but the company's only Illinois clients were in Chicago and Peoria. The pieces were falling into place faster than my mother falls into conspiracy theories. My husband had a baby with another woman. That woman lived in Springfield, approximately 97 miles from our Fairview home. And in 3 days, Dexter and I were scheduled to host our annual anniversary dinner, where his parents, my friends, and half the neighborhood would gather in our backyard to celebrate our perfect marriage. Perfect timing for what I had in mind. I stopped at the library, told my boss I needed personal time, and drove home to start planning what would soon be known throughout Fairview as the event that made Karen from book club spit out her Chardonnay. Our anniversary party wouldn't be celebrating 15 years of marriage after all. It would be celebrating my Independence Day, with a special guest appearance by whatever secrets were waiting for me in Springfield. Wednesday morning arrived with the subtlety of my mother's complaints about the neighbors' wind chimes. Persistent, unavoidable, and increasingly annoying. I called in sick to the library, citing a family emergency, which wasn't technically a lie unless you consider discovering your husband's secret love child more of a family expansion. I waited until Dexter left for work, kissing me goodbye with the audacity of a man whose lips had clearly been busy elsewhere. As soon as his Subaru disappeared around the corner, I headed to our home office, the one place Dexter thought was safe from my organizing tendencies. "Don't touch my filing system," he'd always say, as if randomly stacking papers in piles constituted a system. Today, I wasn't just touching it. I was excavating it like an archaeologist who knew exactly where the treasure was buried. In Fairview, people think librarians are just quiet book pushers who say, shh, professionally. What they don't realize is, we're actually information specialists who can find anything. After 17 years at Fairview Public Library, I could locate a needle in a haystack, a particular comma in War and Peace, and apparently evidence of my husband's double life in under an hour. The credit card statements were illuminating. Monthly charges at Little Sprouts Boutique in Springfield, regular visits to Mommy and Me Wellness Center, a sizable purchase at Forever Memories Photography Studio 3 months ago. Dexter hadn't just been having an affair. He'd been building a parallel family like it was a DIY project from Home Depot. My mother chose that moment to appear in the doorway, leaning dramatically on her new cane, a purchase she'd insisted on despite the doctor's assurance that her toe was perfectly fine. "What are you doing home? Are you sick? Is it contagious? I have a very delicate immune system, you know," Vivian said, keeping a strategic distance. "Just looking for some documents," I replied, not looking up from the pile of receipts I'd found in Dexter's golf expenses folder. Funny how Springfield's finest golf course appeared to be a maternity store. "You have that look," she said suspiciously. "What look?" "The same look you had when you were 10 and found out your father was taking his secretary to Hawaii. You're hunting." Sometimes I forget my mother taught high school drama for 30 years before retiring. She can spot a performance a mile away, even when the performer doesn't know they're on stage. Dexter has a baby with another woman, I said flatly, surprising myself with how easily the words came out. I saw him at the hospital yesterday. To Vivian's credit, she didn't gasp or faint or launch into one of her trademark monologues about the fragility of love. Instead, she nodded slowly and said, "I've been waiting for this shoe to drop for at least a year." "Excuse me? Honey, he's been taking overnight trips to the same place for 2 years, comes home smelling like baby powder, and last Christmas he accidentally wrapped a onesie with your scarf. I figured you knew and were just waiting for the right time to confront him." I stared at my mother, momentarily forgetting the betrayal blazing through my veins. "You knew and didn't tell me?" "Sylvie, darling, there are 2 types of information in this world. The kind people want to hear and the kind they don't. Besides, I thought maybe you had one of those modern arrangements. The ladies on my true crime podcast have all sorts of complicated marriages these days." Before I could process the fact that my mother thought I was in some sort of polyamorous relationship with a baby mama in Springfield, my phone pinged with a text from Fern. "Found the woman. Her name is Maren Wilson. Works at Springfield Community Hospital as a nurse. Address attached. Also, Dexter just called in sick for tomorrow. Said he has food poisoning. Want me to poison his actual food? I know people." I made a mental note to give Fern a substantial gift card this Christmas. "Mom, I need you to cover for me tomorrow. If Dexter asks, tell him I had to handle an emergency cataloging crisis at the library." Vivian brightened, always eager for a role. "What kind of emergency? Should I wear something specific? Do you want me to cry when I tell him? Or should I be stoic? Just tell him I'll be back late and not to wait up. No costume necessary." The drive to Springfield the next morning gave me plenty of time to rehearse confrontations in my head, each version ending with me delivering a devastating one-liner before walking away in slow motion, while Dexter's world exploded behind me. Reality, as usual, had other plans. Springfield Community Hospital was smaller than St. Francis, with a cheerful yellow lobby that felt inappropriately sunny for the nuclear bomb I was about to detonate. At the reception desk, I channeled my inner Karen. "I need to speak with Maren Wilson immediately. It's a family emergency." The receptionist, whose name tag read Joy in Comic Sans, which felt like a personal attack, frowned slightly. "Maren's with a patient. Can I take a message? Tell her it's about Dexter Paxton and their baby. I'm sure she'll want to hear what I have to say." Joy's eyes widened to the size of the novelty coffee mugs sold at our library fundraisers. Oh, I'll page her right away." 15 excruciating minutes later, a petite woman with copper hair and freckles approached cautiously, still wearing scrubs with tiny teddy bears on them. She looked like she belonged on a greeting card, not in the center of my marital apocalypse. "Are you here about Dexter?" she asked, her voice soft but not fearful. "I'm Sylvie, his wife." To my surprise, Maren didn't gasp or run or dissolve into tears. Instead, she nodded slowly, as if confirming something she'd long suspected. "I thought this might happen eventually. I'm actually glad it has," she said, gesturing toward a small courtyard. "Can we talk outside?" As we sat on a bench under a sad-looking maple tree, Maren revealed that she'd met Dexter 3 years ago at a medical supplies conference. He'd told her he was divorced, his ex-wife a controlling librarian who had taken everything in the settlement. "He said you wouldn't even let him have visitation with the dog," Maren said, twisting a tissue between her fingers. "We've never had a dog." "Dexter's allergic," I replied, the absurdity of his lies almost impressive in their creativity. As Maren continued talking, a portrait emerged of a man I barely recognized, one who spent weekends playing devoted father to their 8-month-old daughter Ellie, who had a nursery in Maren's modest ranch house, who had promised marriage once his financial situation stabilized. "He was here yesterday for Ellie's checkup," she explained. "He always brings that ridiculous bear. The nurses call him Teddy Dad behind his back." I should have felt rage, but instead, a strange calm settled over me, the kind that comes when puzzle pieces finally click into place. Dexter hadn't just betrayed me. He'd created an entire fictional autobiography to betray her too. "Does he know you're here?" Maren asked, her green eyes searching mine for clues about what came next. "No," And he won't know until tomorrow night, when we're hosting our 15th anniversary party with 40 of our closest friends, his parents, and my boss. Something shifted in Marin's expression. A hardening. A recognition of shared wounds. "What exactly did you have in mind?" she asked. By the time I left Springfield that afternoon, Marin and I had formed the kind of alliance that could only be forged in the fire of spectacular betrayal. As I drove home, rehearsing what I would say to Dexter when he returned from his food poisoning day trip to visit his secret family, I realized something unexpected. The pain I'd anticipated feeling had been replaced by something far more useful: cold, calculating clarity. Our anniversary party had just gotten a lot more interesting, and the guest list had expanded by 2. Friday dawned with the promise of justice served colder than the potato salad at a Fairview community picnic. I greeted Dexter with the same manufactured smile I use for patrons who return books with coffee stains, pretending everything was normal, while he pretended he hadn't spent yesterday playing Father Knows Best in Springfield. "Feeling better?" I asked as he shuffled into the kitchen, performing his recovering from food poisoning routine with all the authenticity of a gas station Rolex. "Much better," he replied, pouring coffee into his world's greatest husband mug. An irony so thick you could spread it on toast. "Though I should probably take it easy today. Those shrimp must have been bad. Interesting choice, considering we hadn't eaten shrimp in 3 months." I made a mental note to add this to what I now called my Exhibit A collection. "Good idea. Rest up for our big celebration tonight," I said, buttering my toast with unnecessary precision. 15 years is a milestone worth celebrating properly. Dexter's smile flickered like a dying light bulb. "About tonight. I was thinking maybe we should keep it small this year. Just family. I'm still not feeling 100%. Too late, Dexter." The wheels were already in motion, rolling directly toward the cliff I'd built specially for his reputation. "Absolutely not," I replied, channeling my mother's flair for drama. "Your parents are driving in from Milwaukee. My boss is coming. Fern has been talking about her new dress for weeks. The caterers are already prepping. The show must go on." Dexter nodded, defeated by the social obligation armor I'd wrapped around our party. In Fairview, canceling a large event last minute was only acceptable for hospital visits or funeral arrangements, neither of which I was willing to provide him, yet. After he left to work from home in our basement office, I called Vivian, who was at her weekly senior yoga class, theoretically stretching her toe back to health. "Operation Anniversary is a go," I whispered, despite being alone in the kitchen. "I need you to pick up the special order from Fairview Bakery at 2 p.m. sharp." "Roger that," Vivian replied with inappropriate enthusiasm. "Should I wear my navy pantsuit or the burgundy dress with shoulder pads?" "This isn't about you, Mom." "Everything is about costume design, Sylvie. I taught drama for 30 years. The burgundy it is. Perfect for the supporting character who might need to step into a leading role." Before I could protest that this wasn't a community theater production of The Betrayed Librarian, she hung up. At least her commitment to the cause was unwavering. My next call was to Fern, who answered on the first ring as if she'd been waiting by the phone. "Tell me you've ruined him," she said, instead of hello. "Not yet, but I need one more favor." "Name it. I've been collecting his annoying habits in a spreadsheet for 7 years. I made a mental note never to cross Fern. "Can you make sure everyone from the office comes tonight? Especially Harrison from accounting. The one Dexter stole the Pinewood account from? Consider it done. Harrison still has the PowerPoint slides proving it was his work." By noon, I'd confirmed that all 40 guests were still attending, the catering was on schedule, and the special slideshow I'd prepared was loaded onto a USB drive that would connect seamlessly with our backyard projection system. The same system Dexter had insisted on buying last summer for outdoor movie nights that mysteriously never materialized because he was always working late. At 1 p.m., I received a text from Marin. "We're ready whenever you are. Ellie has her special outfit on. She looks adorable." Attached was a photo of a cherubic baby girl wearing a onesie that read, "Daddy's Little Secret," a custom rush order from a print shop in Springfield that had cost me extra, but was worth every penny. Everything was falling into place with the precision of a well-organized card catalog. Then my phone rang again. Dexter's mother, Eleanor Paxton, calling from the road. "Sylvie, dear, we're about an hour away. I've brought Dexter's baby book for the anniversary display. I found the sweetest photos of him as an infant. The universe apparently had a flair for irony that rivaled my own. That's perfect, Eleanor, I said, inspiration striking like lightning. Actually, could you bring all the family albums you have? I'm putting together a special presentation. Oh, how wonderful. I have 5 albums in the car. Roland thought I was being excessive, but I told him anniversaries are about family history. If only she knew how prophetic those words were. By 4 p.m., our backyard had transformed into a Pinterest-worthy celebration space. White fairy lights draped from trees, photos of Dexter and me through the years, strategically ending at year 12 when his trips to Springfield began, decorated the tables, and a 3-tier anniversary cake from Fairview Bakery stood proudly on the dessert table. What the guests wouldn't notice, yet, was that the top tier of the cake featured a custom topper hidden under a decorative cover, waiting for its dramatic reveal, or that the photo slideshow scheduled for 8 p.m. had been edited significantly from previous year's versions. Vivian returned from her errands looking like she was auditioning for Real Housewives of Fairview in her burgundy dress and impractical heels. Everything is set, she stage whispered. I added some dramatic touches to the cake table. Every production needs proper set dressing. I peered outside to see she'd surrounded the cake with theatrical red roses and what appeared to be library-themed confetti. The tiny books and spectacles sprinkled across the white tablecloth were actually somewhat charming, in a nerdy librarian revenge sort of way. At 5 p.m., Dexter emerged from the basement, showered and dressed in his special occasion blue button-down that brought out his eyes. Eyes I once thought looked at me with love, but now recognized as windows to an elaborate fiction. Wow, you've outdone yourself, he said, surveying the backyard. The place looks amazing. Well, 15 years is a big deal, I replied. Some would say it deserves special recognition. Something in my tone must have triggered his self-preservation instincts because he gave me an odd look. Are you feeling okay? You seem different. Never better, I smiled. Just excited to celebrate our marriage in front of everyone who matters to us. At 6 p.m., the first guests arrived, my co-workers from the library bearing wine and well wishes. By 6:30, the backyard was filling nicely, with Dexter's parents holding court near the drinks table, telling anyone who would listen about how they knew from the start that Dexter and I were perfect for each other. At 6:45, Fern arrived with 6 colleagues from Midwest Paper Supply, including Harrison from accounting, who made a beeline for Dexter with the intensity of a man on a mission. At 7 p.m., I checked my phone to find another text from Marin. Parked down the street as discussed. Waiting for your signal. Everything was proceeding according to plan, the pieces moving across the board with the inevitability of a well-played chess match. Dexter, for his part, seemed increasingly nervous, checking his phone frequently and casting suspicious glances in my direction. At 7:30, as the golden hour cast a deceptively romantic glow over our gathering, I clinked my glass to get everyone's attention. Thank you all for coming to celebrate 15 years of marriage, I began, watching Dexter's face carefully. Before we cut the cake and start the slideshow, I'd like to make a toast to my husband. The crowd murmured appreciatively, glasses raised, completely unaware that they were about to become the audience for the most dramatic production Fairview had ever seen. But first, I continued, I believe we're still missing a few guests of honor. Would everyone please direct their attention to our driveway? I announced, my voice carrying across the backyard with the authority I usually reserved for telling teenagers that TikTok videos were not permitted in the biography section. On cue, Marin's silver Honda pulled up, and the party went silent faster than the library during state testing week. Dexter's face transitioned through more emotions than a daytime soap opera marathon: confusion, recognition, horror, and finally, the pallor of a man watching his carefully constructed house of lies collapse like a souffle in an earthquake. Sylvie, what is this? He hissed, grabbing my elbow as Marin emerged from the car, baby carrier in hand. This, I replied, loudly enough for our nearest guests to hear, is the rest of your family joining the celebration. 15 years of marriage, 8 months of fatherhood. Why celebrate just one milestone? Eleanor Paxton, puzzled but still maintaining her Midwestern politeness, was the first to approach Marin. "Hello there. Are you friends of Sylvie's?" "Not exactly," Marin replied with remarkable composure. "I'm Marin Wilson, and this is Ellie, your granddaughter." The backyard erupted like someone had thrown a lit match into a fireworks factory. Eleanor's polite smile froze on her face. Roland Paxton dropped an entire plate of cocktail shrimp. My boss knocked over her wine glass. And Vivian, bless her dramatic heart, gasped so theatrically she nearly fell off her decorative garden chair. "I don't understand," Eleanor stammered, looking from Marin to Dexter to me in rapid succession. "It's quite simple, really," I said, taking the baby carrier from Marin and placing it gently on a nearby table. While Dexter was telling me he was working late in Springfield, he was actually starting a second family. Meet Ellie Paxton, born January 15th this year. Isn't she adorable? She has Dexter's eyes, don't you think? Eleanor bent over the carrier and gasped again, this time with recognition rather than shock. The Paxton eyes, a distinctive hazel with amber flecks, were unmistakable, staring up from Ellie's cherubic face. Dexter lunged forward, his face a shade of red previously unknown to science. "This is insane. I can explain—" "Oh, please do," I interrupted, my voice sweet as artificial sweetener. "Explain to everyone how you told Marin you were divorced. Explain the nursery you helped decorate. Explain the daddy's little princess teddy bear you brought to the hospital on Tuesday, the same day I took my mother to the emergency room and saw you there." The crowd had formed a semicircle around us, 40 pairs of eyes locked on the unfolding drama. Fern was recording everything on her phone with the dedication of a documentary filmmaker, while Harrison from accounting watched with undisguised glee. Dexter's survival instincts finally kicked in. "Can we discuss this privately?" he pleaded, sweat beading on his forehead like condensation on a cold glass of schadenfreude. "Why start having private discussions now?" I asked. "You've been living a very public lie. I think it's only fair we have a very public truth." Then I turned to our guests, switching to my best librarian storytelling voice. "For those who need the full story, let me catch you up. 3 years ago, Dexter met Marin at a medical supplies conference. He told her he was divorced from his controlling ex-wife, that's me apparently, who took everything in the settlement, including visitation rights to our non-existent dog. Nervous laughter rippled through the crowd. Dexter looked like he might either faint or make a run for the hedge maze at Fairview Botanical Gardens. Meanwhile, back in Fairview, I was the clueless wife, believing my husband was working late, attending paper supply emergencies, and occasionally eating bad shrimp that gave him food poisoning. I made air quotes around food poisoning so emphatic they could have generated wind power. "Sylvie, please," Dexter started. "Oh, I'm not done," I continued. "Let's talk about finances. While I was dutifully depositing my librarian's salary into our joint account, Dexter was maintaining a second household. The evidence is all here in what I call Exhibit A." On cue, Vivian wheeled out a presentation board I'd created, a masterpiece of organization showing credit card statements, receipts, and calendar screenshots, all neatly categorized and labeled with color-coded tabs. The Little Sprouts boutique in Springfield has apparently been the beneficiary of approximately $12,000 of our joint savings over the past year. That's not including the professional photo shoot, the nursery furniture, or the monthly dinners at Bella Rosa, where Dexter conducted his alternate life as divorced dad of the year. Eleanor Paxton had progressed from shock to righteous maternal fury. "Dexter James Paxton, what have you done?" she demanded, using the triple name technique that strikes fear into the heart of any child, regardless of age. Marin stepped forward, her composed demeanor at odds with the chaos surrounding her. "I had no idea Dexter was married," she said, addressing the crowd but looking directly at Eleanor. "When I discovered the truth this week, I was as shocked as all of you. I came here today because I believe in facing reality, no matter how painful. That was my cue for the coup de grace. Speaking of reality, it's time for our anniversary slideshow." The projector screen I'd set up flickered to life, but instead of the usual parade of happy couple moments, it displayed a split-screen presentation. On the left, photos of Dexter and me throughout our marriage. On the right, screenshots of text messages between Dexter and Marin, his secret bank account statements, and photos Marin had provided of Dexter playing the devoted father role in Springfield. "I call this presentation a tale of two Dexters," I announced. Or should I say a tale of two deceivers? The slideshow advanced automatically, each image more damning than the last, accompanied by captions I'd spent hours perfecting for maximum impact. The crowd's reactions ranged from horrified gasps to uncomfortable laughter to outright applause when particularly damning evidence appeared. Dexter stood frozen in place, watching his double life projected in high definition for everyone who mattered in Fairview to see. When the final slide appeared, a simple question that read, "Any questions?" he finally broke. "Fine. Yes, I have another family. I made a mistake," he shouted, his voice cracking. "But you were always so absorbed in your books and your mother moved in and I felt invisible in my own home." The victimhood attempt fell flat as a pancake at the bottom of a pool. Eleanor Paxton stepped forward, removing her cardigan like a fighter preparing for battle. "Dexter James, your father and I did not raise you to be this kind of man," she said, her voice trembling with rage. "Your grandfather would be ashamed." For Midwesterners, invoking ancestral disappointment was the nuclear option. "Now," I said, turning to the cake table, "who's ready for dessert?" As if orchestrated by the gods of karma themselves, I unveiled the cake topper, a custom-made miniature of a librarian holding open a book titled Grounds for Divorce, a Complete Guide. "I've taken the liberty of drafting the divorce papers," I announced, passing a manila folder to Dexter. "You'll find I'm being quite generous considering the circumstances. You can keep your secret family, but the house and half of our savings stay with me. And of course, your mother's heirloom ring that you promised would stay in the family. Well, technically it will, just not with the family you thought." The crowd erupted in applause, led enthusiastically by Fern and Harrison from accounting. Even Roland Paxton, a man of few words and fewer displays of emotion, nodded approvingly. Dexter, defeated and deflated, looked around at the faces of friends, colleagues, and family, all witnesses to his spectacular downfall, and did the only thing left to do. He signed the papers right there on the anniversary cake table, using the commemorative pen we'd received as a wedding gift from the Fairview Library Board. 3 months after what Fairview now refers to as the Librarian's Revenge, or as the high school drama club calls it in their unauthorized reenactment, How to Catalog a Catastrophe, life has settled into a new normal that's surprisingly comfortable, like breaking in sensible shoes or finally admitting that skinny jeans were never your friend. Dexter moved to Springfield permanently, though permanently might be optimistic since Marin kicked him out after discovering he'd been skimming money from their joint account to gamble online. Last I heard, he's living in a studio apartment above Jimbo's sports bar and telling anyone who'll listen that he's the victim of female conspiracy. The conspiracy apparently includes the judge who ordered him to pay both child support and alimony, the bank that froze his accounts after finding evidence of fraud, and the Springfield Community Hospital Ethics Board that denied his application for a cushy administrative position. Meanwhile, I kept the house, half our savings, minus the $12,000 he'd already spent on his secret family, and something far more valuable, my dignity, wrapped in a shiny bow of community support. Nothing brings a small town together quite like spectacular public humiliation of a deserving party. Eleanor and Roland Paxton, to their eternal credit, have remained firmly in my corner. Eleanor calls weekly to check on me and to provide updates on her attempts to rehabilitate our son into a decent human being. Roland mostly grunts in agreement in the background. They've also embraced their role as grandparents to Ellie, creating the strangest extended family arrangement Fairview has ever gossiped about, which is saying something in a town where the mayor once accidentally married his second cousin, twice removed, but still. Maureen and I have developed an unexpected friendship built on the solid foundation of having survived Hurricane Dexter. We meet for coffee twice a month to compare notes on his latest ridiculous excuses for late payments, and to admire Ellie, who has her father's eyes but thankfully seems to have inherited her mother's moral compass. I've become something of an honorary aunt, sending age-appropriate books with feminist themes and college fund contributions on major holidays. As for my mother, Vivian has finally found her true calling, regaling her senior yoga group with increasingly elaborate versions of the librarian's revenge. In her latest telling, I apparently rappelled from the roof to make my entrance, and had hired a choir to sing a custom ballad about infidelity set to the tune of The Star-Spangled Banner. She's never let facts get in the way of a good performance. The most surprising development came 6 weeks after the party, when Harrison from accounting asked me to dinner. Turns out, watching someone systematically dismantle a lying spouse with the precision of a surgical strike is his love language. We're taking things slow, but he appreciates my organizational skills and hasn't once claimed to have food poisoning when he actually has plans with another woman, so the bar is admittedly on the floor, but he's clearing it nicely. Fern, now promoted to office manager after exposing multiple accounting irregularities in Dexter's expense reports, sends me a fruit basket every month with cards saying things like, "Thanks for the career boost," and "Revenge is sweet, but promotion is sweeter." She's dating the delivery guy who brings the baskets, proving that karma works in mysterious and occasionally fruit-filled ways. People often ask if I regret the public nature of my revenge. Wouldn't a private confrontation have been more dignified? Perhaps a quiet divorce without the community spectacle? Maybe a civilized mediation with neutral third parties? To which I say, absolutely not. Some betrayals are so complete, so breathtakingly audacious, that they deserve to be met with equal dramatic force. Dexter didn't just cheat on me. He created an entire alternate reality where I was the villain of his story, the controlling ex-wife who wouldn't even let him see the dog we never had. He spent our joint savings on another family while I budgeted carefully to maintain our home. He looked me in the eyes every night for 3 years and lied with the casual ease of someone ordering their regular coffee. That level of deception doesn't deserve privacy. It deserves a spotlight and a captive audience. The anniversary party footage, tastefully edited by Fern to remove anything that might traumatize young Ellie when she's older, has become something of a local legend. The Fairview Library now hosts a monthly Truth and Consequences book club, where we discuss literature about betrayal and resilience while drinking wine and occasionally burning symbolic items in a fire pit behind the reference section, with proper fire safety measures in place, of course. I'm still a librarian at heart. If there's a moral to this story, besides the obvious don't start a secret family if your wife knows how to create devastatingly effective presentation boards, it's this. Librarians spend their professional lives organizing information, finding connections between seemingly unrelated facts, and presenting complex material in accessible formats. Cross us at your peril. As for me, I've learned that life doesn't always follow a neat narrative arc with properly cataloged chapters. Sometimes there are unexpected plot twists, unreliable narrators, and sequels you never anticipated. But with the right research skills and a well-executed revenge plan, you can always edit your own story and start a new edition. Just make sure to keep the receipts, both metaphorically and literally. They make excellent visual aids for anniversary party slideshows. Look, I'm not saying I planned my husband's career suicide at our 15th wedding anniversary dinner, but when he stood up at the Capitol Grill and announced his affair with the paralegal, I was already holding 61% of his law firm in my Hermes clutch. My name's Celeste Mercer, and I'm a corporate acquisitions attorney who spent 6 months buying out the retiring partners of Caldwell and Associates, while my husband, Orlando, senior partner and recent midlife crisis cliché, was spending firm money on his 28-year-old side piece. The kicker? I handle their corporate acquisitions. So basically, Orlando's been raw dogging both his career and his marriage while I've been quietly becoming his boss. The Thursday night he decided to blow up our marriage, we were surrounded by both families, our 20-year-old twins Marin and Brooks home from UGA, and half the partners from his firm. 75 people watching him stand up, tap his wine glass like he's about to give a heartfelt toast, and instead deliver, "I'm in love with someone else. I want a divorce. You can keep the house, Celeste." The audacity. The absolute audacity of a man who thought 20 pounds of Botox and a leased Porsche Cayenne made him interesting. Here's what Orlando didn't know that Thursday night. I'd already hired the forensic accountant. I'd already discovered his creative reallocation of firm funds. I'd already lined up the votes for his removal. And I'd already thanked him, out loud with a warm smile that made his face go from smug to confused in 0.5 seconds. "Thank you for your honesty, darling," I'd said, raising my wine glass. That must have taken courage. The confusion in his eyes? Chef's kiss. Because Friday morning, Orlando walked into what he thought was a routine partners meeting and found me sitting at the head of the table with our accountant, our new HR director, and a 40-page forensic audit detailing exactly where $340,000 of firm money had gone over the past 2 years. Spoiler alert, it went to Bryn's Buckhead apartment, a BMW lease, and approximately 67 stays at the W Hotel that he'd expensed as client development. Let me back up before I get ahead of myself, because this is a masterclass in strategic patience, and it started way before that Thursday night at the Capitol Grill. I met Orlando Caldwell 20 years ago when I was a hungry first-year associate at a corporate firm in Midtown, and he was the charismatic third year who wore Armani suits his salary couldn't afford and talked about starting his own practice, once the time was right. We got married fast, too fast probably, and I got pregnant with the twins on our honeymoon in Napa. Romantic, right? Except I spent my entire pregnancy working from home while finishing my bar certification, and Orlando spent it networking at every golf course in the greater Atlanta metropolitan area. But here's the thing about Orlando. He's brilliant at bringing in clients and terrible at literally everything else. The firm's success? That was me. I built the corporate acquisitions department from nothing. I brought in the tech startups, the healthcare consolidations, the real estate development deals that kept Caldwell and Associates in the black. Orlando brought in the country club schmoozes who wanted someone to play 18 holes with them before signing retainer agreements. For 15 years, I was fine with that arrangement. I didn't need the spotlight. I had my work, my kids, my book club with Thea and the other suburban moms who day-drank rosé and pretended we weren't all one husband scandal away from a nervous breakdown. Then, about 2.5 years ago, Orlando started coming home late, started working weekends at the office, started going to legal conferences in cities that definitely weren't hosting legal conferences. And look, I'm not stupid. I'm a lawyer who specializes in due diligence. I can spot a shell company from 50 yards. You think I couldn't spot my husband's affair? I spotted it. I just decided to get strategic about it. The thing about being underestimated is that it gives you room to maneuver. Orlando's always thought of me as the supportive wife, who handles the boring corporate paperwork while he does the real lawyering in court. Never mind that my billable hours were triple his. Never mind that I was invited to speak at the ABA conference while he was still trying to get Bar Journal editors to return his calls. So when I started noticing the signs, the new cologne, the suspiciously thorough personal grooming, the way he'd angle his phone away from me, I didn't confront him. I did what any good corporate attorney would do. I started building a case. First, I hired a private investigator. Not some TV drama trenchcoat situation, but a former FBI agent named Vera who charged $400 an hour and got me photos of Orlando and Bryn at restaurants, hotels, and one particularly memorable afternoon at SunTrust Park where they were definitely not watching the Braves game. Second, I called my best friend Thea, a financial advisor who knows more about money laundering than most federal prosecutors, and asked her if she'd noticed anything interesting about the firm's expenditures. Thea, bless her, had been waiting for this conversation. She showed up at my house with a bottle of Veuve Clicquot and a spreadsheet that would make the IRS weep with joy. "Girl," she'd said, spreading the papers across my kitchen island. "Your husband's been using the firm credit card like it's monopoly money. Either he's the dumbest lawyer in Georgia, or he thinks you're too stupid to notice." Third, I reached out to 3 retiring partners at Caldwell and Associates. Nice older guys who'd been quietly trying to cash out their equity for years, but couldn't find buyers because Orlando kept forgetting to facilitate the transactions. Funny how motivated sellers become when you offer them 10% above market value and promise a smooth, confidential closing. The whole operation took 6 months. 6 months of smiling at Orlando over breakfast. 6 months of asking about his day and pretending I believed his bullshit about late client calls. 6 months of watching him preen and posture while I quietly bought his kingdom out from under him. So back to that Thursday night at the Capitol Grill. Orlando had insisted on this big anniversary dinner. 15 years, Celeste. We need to celebrate properly. He'd invited everyone. His parents, my parents, the twins, his managing partners Hugh and Lawson, their wives, even his paralegal Bryn, which, in retrospect, wow. We'd been seated at this long table in the private dining room, and I'd watched Orlando get progressively drunker on overpriced scotch while telling war stories about cases he hadn't actually won. Maren kept shooting me these "dad's being embarrassing again" looks across the table. Brooks was on his phone, probably texting his girlfriend. My mother was discussing her recent kitchen renovation with Orlando's mother, blissfully unaware of the impending detonation. Around 9 p.m., Orlando stood up, tapped his glass. The room went quiet. "I want to thank everyone for being here tonight," he started. And I thought maybe he was actually going to give a normal speech. "Celeste and I have been married for 15 years, and it's been quite a journey. Here we go," I thought. "But I need to be honest with everyone here," he continued. And I saw his managing partner Hugh's face go pale. Hugh knew. Hugh definitely knew what was coming. "I've fallen in love with someone else. I want a divorce." You could have heard a pin drop. My mother's wine glass froze halfway to her lips. Maren's jaw literally dropped. Brooks looked up from his phone with an expression of, "Did Dad just—" Orlando was looking at me, waiting for tears or screaming or some kind of dramatic breakdown that would justify his narrative of the suffocating marriage he needed to escape. Instead, I smiled, warmly, genuinely. "Thank you for your honesty, darling," I said, raising my wine glass in a toast. "That must have taken courage. I appreciate you being upfront about it." The confusion on his face was delicious. This wasn't the script he'd prepared for. I was supposed to make a scene. I was supposed to embarrass myself while he played the conflicted but brave husband who'd found true love. You're not upset?" he stammered. "Upset?" I took a sip of my Pinot Noir. "Orlando, if you're unhappy, then you should absolutely pursue your happiness. I want you to be happy." I could see Thea 3 seats down trying not to laugh into her napkin. The twins looked bewildered. Orlando's parents looked mortified. "Well," Orlando said, clearly thrown. "Good, that's good. You can keep the house, obviously." "That's very generous," I said, "though we should probably discuss the details tomorrow. You have that partners meeting at 9, right?" His face lit up. He thought I was going to make this easy. "Right, yes, the meeting. We'll talk after that." "Perfect," I said and raised my glass higher. "To new beginnings." Everyone awkwardly clinked glasses, and the dinner dissolved into the most uncomfortable coffee and dessert service in Capitol Grill history. That night, after Orlando had packed a bag and left for God knows where, spoiler, Bryn's apartment, I sat in my kitchen with Thea and a bottle of wine. "You're a savage," Thea said, admiring. "An absolute savage." "Tomorrow's going to be interesting," I said. "Tomorrow's going to be legendary," she corrected. She had no idea. Because Friday morning at 8:45 a.m., I walked into Caldwell & Associates with my new majority ownership papers, my forensic audit, and my lawyer face, the one that makes opposing counsel settle before discovery. Orlando was already in the conference room, drinking coffee and laughing with Hugh about something. He saw me walk in and his face went confused again. "Celeste, what are you doing here?" I sat down at the head of the table, his usual seat. "Taking a seat at my own firm," I said, and watched the color drain from his face. The other partners filed in, our accountant, our new HR director, my attorney. And then I dropped the audit on the table. "Gentlemen," I said, "we need to discuss some irregularities in partner disbursements." Orlando's coffee cup froze halfway to his lips. Game on. The thing about watching a man's entire world collapse is that it happens in stages. Like watching a building demolition in slow motion. First the support beams buckle, then the walls crack, then everything just crumbles. Orlando's demolition started the moment I slid that forensic audit across the conference table. "What is this?" he asked, but his voice had that tight quality that meant he already knew exactly what it was. "That," I said, keeping my tone pleasant and professional, the same tone I use when I'm about to eviscerate opposing counsel in a deposition, is a comprehensive audit of partner distributions and firm expenditures over the past 24 months. Fascinating reading, really. I'd recommend starting with page 17. That's where the W hotel charges get really creative. Hugh picked up the report. His face went from confused to horrified in about 30 seconds. Lawson was reading over his shoulder, and I watched his expression mirror Hugh's. Orlando's face, though. Orlando's face was doing this interesting thing where it was trying to decide between indignant denial and pure panic. It settled somewhere around angry, trapped animal. You had no right to— Actually, I interrupted, pulling out another document. I had every right. As the majority shareholder of Caldwell & Associates, I have a fiduciary responsibility to ensure firm assets aren't being misappropriated. And Orlando, sweetheart, you've been misappropriating the hell out of firm assets. Majority shareholder? Lawson looked up from the audit. What are you talking about? I slid the ownership documents across the table. Watching 3 successful attorneys realize they'd been completely blindsided was almost as satisfying as the revenge itself. Almost. Over the past 6 months, I've acquired the equity stakes of partners Whitmore, Jackson, and Sullivan, all of whom were very motivated to sell after their buyout requests kept getting mysteriously delayed. I looked pointedly at Orlando. I now own 61% of this firm, which means I have controlling interest, which means— And Orlando, you're going to want to pay attention to this part, I can call for a vote to remove any partner for cause. The silence in that conference room was chef's kiss material. This is insane, Orlando finally managed. You can't just— You're my wife. Was, I corrected. Past tense. You filed for divorce last night at the Capitol Grill, remember? In front of 75 witnesses, including your managing partners and both our families. Very memorable, by the way. My mother's still processing it. Hugh was speed reading through the audit now, his face getting progressively more pale. Orlando, please tell me you didn't actually expense Bryn's apartment on the firm card. Or her car lease, Lawson added, flipping pages. Or her— Wait, is this a Tiffany's charge for $8,000? It was her birthday, Orlando said weakly. Which you celebrated on firm time, I said. During billable hours, you charged to the Mercer Industries acquisition, which, fun fact, is my client. So you were literally charging my client for the hours you spent buying jewelry for your mistress. That's what we call adding insult to injury. Our new HR director, a formidable woman named Gwen, who I'd poached from King & Spalding specifically for this moment, cleared her throat. Mr. Caldwell, I need to inform you that misappropriation of firm funds constitutes grounds for immediate termination under Partnership Agreement Section 7.3. Additionally, the State Bar of Georgia takes a very dim view of attorneys who commingle personal and professional finances. Orlando's face had gone from red to white to a kind of grayish green that reminded me of old guacamole. You're threatening my license? I'm not threatening anything, I said. I'm simply pointing out that $340,000 in unauthorized personal expenditures charged to firm accounts is the kind of thing that gets reported to the bar's Office of General Counsel. Whether that report gets filed depends entirely on how cooperative you are in the next 5 minutes. You know what's funny? All those years Orlando spent treating me like the corporate paperwork monkey while he played big, important litigator. All those partner dinners where he'd introduce me as, my wife Celeste, she handles the boring stuff. All those times he'd interrupt me mid-sentence to explain something about law to me. To me, a woman who graduated second in her class from Emory Law. This right here, watching him realize I'd been 13 steps ahead of him for 6 months. This was every single one of those microaggressions getting their karma delivered, express shipping. What do you want? Orlando asked. And there it was, the defeat in his voice. Oh, Orlando. I leaned back in my chair. I want you to resign from the partnership effective immediately. I want you to sign over your equity stake for fair market value minus the $340,000 you embezzled. Sorry, misappropriated. I want a clean divorce with me keeping the house, the vacation condo in Hilton Head, and 70% of our liquid assets. And I want you to tell Bryn that her paralegal position has been eliminated due to budget restructuring. You can't fire her because I can fire her because she falsified her timesheets to match your fraudulent billing, Gwen interrupted. Page 23 of the audit. She's been clocking billable hours while you two were at the W Hotel. That's grounds for immediate termination with cause. Hugh and Lawson were exchanging glances. I could see them doing the mental math. If they backed Orlando, they'd be complicit in the fraud. If they backed me, they kept their licenses and their livelihoods. I moved to accept Orlando Caldwell's resignation and remove him as managing partner, Hugh said. Seconded, Lawson added immediately. Orlando looked between them like they'd just stabbed him in the back. Are you serious right now? I built this firm. Actually, I said, pulling out another folder, because I'm nothing if not thorough. I have the billing records for the past 10 years. Would you like to guess whose billable hours account for 68% of firm revenue? Hint. It's not the guy who spent every Thursday afternoon at the country club calling it business development. Lawson was reading my billing records now. Jesus, Celeste. These numbers are substantial, I finished. Yes, I'm aware. I've been carrying this firm since 2015. I just let Orlando think he was in charge because it was easier than arguing about it every Tuesday. You've been planning this, Orlando said, and there was something almost like respect in his voice. Almost. Mostly, it was horror. Planning implies I wanted this, I said. Orlando, I would have been perfectly happy continuing our arrangement indefinitely. You had your country club, I had my work, we had our kids, but you decided to blow it all up at the Capitol Grill in front of everyone we know. So yes, I had a contingency plan. I'm a corporate attorney. I have contingency plans for my contingency plans. Gwen slid a resignation agreement across the table to Orlando. This needs to be signed by end of business today. We've already prepared your exit package. Exit package? Orlando looked at the numbers and went even paler. This is half what my equity is worth. That's what happens when you embezzle $350,000, I said cheerfully. The math gets complicated. Oh, and you'll need to clear out your office by 5 p.m. We're converting it into a library. Something useful. Orlando signed the papers. He didn't have a choice. It was either sign or face bar complaints, civil suits, and probably criminal charges. Sometimes you don't get to pick your battles. Sometimes the battle picks you, and you're already on the ground before you realize you're fighting. As he stood to leave, he looked at me with something that might have been genuine emotion. I loved you, you know. Once. I know, I said. But you loved yourself more. And Orlando? That apartment you got Bryn in Buckhead? The lease is in the firm's name. She's got until Monday to vacate. He left without another word. Hugh stayed behind after everyone else filed out. Celeste, I need to say, we had no idea he was doing this. I know you didn't, Hugh. That's why you still have a job. What happens now? I smiled. Now we call Griffin Tate and make him partner. We restructure the corporate division. We triple our revenue in 18 months. And we make Caldwell and Associates the most successful firm in Atlanta. Without Orlando, Hugh said. Because of his absence, I corrected. Trust me, this is an upgrade. I left the office around 11. I had lunch plans with Thea at the new tapas place in Buckhead, and I'd promised the twins I'd call them to explain what the hell had happened last night. But first, I sat in my car in the parking garage and took a moment to appreciate the absolute poetry of what had just happened. My phone buzzed. Text from Marin. Mom, did you just fire Dad? Brooks and I are living for this drama. I laughed, typed back. Not fired. He resigned. There's a difference. Marin. Savage queen behavior. We're proud of you. Yeah, me too. The lunch with Thea at Eclipse de Luna was supposed to be celebratory, but I spent the first 15 minutes just staring at my sangria while she demolished a plate of patatas bravas. You're processing, she said finally. I can see the wheels turning. I just ended my husband's career, I said, in front of his partners, using a forensic audit I secretly commissioned while pretending everything was fine over breakfast for 6 months. Correction, you ended your ex-husband's career after he publicly humiliated you at your anniversary dinner and embezzled from the firm you basically built. Thea pointed a fork at me. There's a difference. Is there? Celeste. Babe. He bought his mistress a BMW with company money. He expensed their sex hotel on client bills. He was going to leave you with nothing while he rode off into the sunset with paralegal Barbie and your life's work. She paused. Actually, I need you to tell me again about his face when you showed him the ownership papers. That's my new happy place. I couldn't help laughing. It was pretty spectacular. Damn right it was. Thea raised her glass. To strategic patience and forensic accounting. We clinked glasses, and I felt something loosen in my chest. Maybe she was right. Maybe I wasn't the villain here. Maybe I was just someone who'd been pushed too far and had the resources to push back. My phone buzzed. Text from Griffin Tate, the attorney I'd been courting to join the firm for the past 3 months. Heard interesting news. Hugh called. Should we talk? I showed Thea the text. Griffin's heard. Good. He's exactly what the firm needs. Smart, hungry, doesn't have Orlando's ego problem. She paused. Also, not to be shallow, but have you seen him? Because, Thea, I'm just saying, post-divorce glow-up potential is real. I typed back to Griffin. Lunch Monday? We should discuss partnership structure. His response came immediately. Already planning my acceptance speech. The thing about Griffin was that he reminded me of myself 10 years ago. Sharp, ambitious, willing to do the unglamorous work that actually made money. He'd been at Alston & Bird doing corporate compliance, slowly dying of boredom while bringing in clients nobody else wanted. I'd offered him senior partner track and his own team. He'd been circling for months, waiting to see if I was serious. Now he'd get to see exactly how serious I was. My phone rang. Brooks calling. Mom, Marin and I are coming home this weekend. We need details. Real details, not the sanitized version. There's not much to tell that you didn't see last night. Oh, come on. Dad's blowing up our family group chat saying you staged some kind of corporate coup. Grandma's having a meltdown. Marin's already made a TikTok about it. She didn't post it, but she made it. We need the full story. I looked at Thea, who was shamelessly eavesdropping. Your father made some poor financial decisions. I corrected them. That's the story. Mom, I'm a finance major. Marin's studying business law. We're not babies. What did he actually do? So I told him. Not everything. There are some things your kids don't need to know about their father's hotel habits. But enough. The embezzlement. The affair timeline. The fact that I'd been planning my exit strategy since February. Brooks was quiet for a long moment. So you basically bought Dad's company out from under him while he was cheating on you with the paralegal. In simplified terms, yes. That's the most savage thing I've ever heard. Marin. Mom bought Dad's firm. I could hear Marin screaming in the background. They were definitely their mother's children. We're coming home tonight, Brooks said. Screw our Friday classes. This is too good. After I hung up, Thea was grinning. Your kids are incredible. They get it from me, I said, and for the first time in 24 hours, I actually believed it. The weekend was chaos. The twins came home and demanded a complete timeline of events, which I provided while we ordered Thai food and drank wine on the back porch. Well, I drank wine. They drank kombucha because they're 20 and insufferable about gut health. So wait, Marin said, scrolling through her phone. Bryn just deleted all her social media. Like, completely nuked her Instagram. Can't say I'm surprised, I said. Hugh probably called her this afternoon to terminate her employment. She's going to want to disappear for a while. Good, Brooks said. She knew he was married. She knew about us. That's calculating. Yeah, well, calculated plans have a way of backfiring. I took another sip of wine. Trust me on that. Marin was still scrolling. Oh my God, Mom, you're not going to believe this. She turned her phone around. It was a Facebook post from Orlando's mother, my soon-to-be ex-mother-in-law Judith, in the neighborhood HOA group. I want to thank everyone for their concern and support during this difficult time. My son Orlando is going through a challenging transition, but we have faith that truth and integrity will prevail. Some people will do anything for money and revenge, but character always reveals itself in the end. I stared at the post, read it again, then started laughing. She did not just post that in the HOA group, I said. She absolutely did, Marin confirmed. And Mom, the comments are insane. Mrs. Patterson from 3 doors down wrote, "Maybe Orlando should have thought about character before he had an affair. It's getting spicy." Brooks was reading over her shoulder. "Oh, damn." Mr. Chen, sorry, Mr. Morrison, wrote, "Interesting take from someone whose son embezzled from his own firm." "How does everyone already know everything?" I asked. "Because Hugh's wife Caroline is in my mom's Pilates class, and she told everyone this morning," Thea said. She'd come over after dinner and was now curled up in one of the porch chairs with her own wine. The suburban gossip network is faster than CNN. By Monday, everyone in a 10-mile radius will know Orlando got caught with his hand in the cookie jar and his paralegal in the Buckhead apartment. My phone buzzed. Text from Hugh. "Judith's Facebook post is not helpful. Trying to do damage control. I'm sorry." I showed it to Thea. Hugh's apologizing for his business partner's mother. "Hugh's trying to keep his job," Thea corrected. "Which, smart man. He knows which way the wind's blowing." Sunday morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls from Orlando. I didn't call him back. Instead, I went to my lawyer's office, my personal attorney, not anyone from the firm, and spent 3 hours hammering out divorce terms. By Sunday evening, I had a separation agreement drafted that was so airtight it could survive a nuclear blast. Orlando would get his 401k, his car, and a settlement that amounted to about 30% of our liquid assets after adjusting for his embezzlement. I'd keep the house, the Hilton Head condo, my retirement accounts, and primary custody of our kids' college funds. My lawyer, a sharp woman named Petra, who specialized in high-asset divorces, reviewed everything twice. "This is solid. He'd be insane not to sign." "He doesn't have a choice," I said. "If he fights me, I file bar complaints and civil suits. He'll be buried in legal fees before discovery even starts." "You've thought this through." "I've thought everything through, Petra. That's kind of my thing." Monday morning came faster than I expected. I drove to the office early, before 7, and sat in my car for a few minutes just looking at the building. Caldwell and Associates. Except it wasn't really Caldwell's anymore, was it? I made a mental note to talk to Hugh about rebranding. Maybe Mercer Tate and Associates had a nice ring to it. Griffin was waiting in my office when I got upstairs. He'd brought coffee from the good place downtown, not the break room sludge. "Thought you might need this," he said, handing me a latte. "You're hired." I assumed. "Hugh sent me the partnership papers this weekend. I signed them yesterday." He sat down across from my desk. "I also heard through the legal community grapevine that Orlando Caldwell had a very bad Friday." "You could say that." "Want to tell me what I'm walking into?" So I did. The whole story, start to finish. The affair, the embezzlement, the acquisition, the confrontation. Griffin listened without interrupting, which I appreciated. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and let out a low whistle. "You orchestrated a corporate takeover while going through a divorce while maintaining a full caseload. That's actually impressive. It's called multitasking. It's called being terrifying." He grinned. "I like it. So what's the plan now? What are we building here?" And that was the question, wasn't it? What came next? I pulled out the business plan I'd been working on for the past month. We're going to triple our corporate client base in 18 months. We're going to specialize in tech startups and healthcare acquisitions. We're going to become the go-to firm for mid-market deals in the Southeast. And we're going to do it without the dead weight of partners who think golf counts as billable hours. Griffin was reading through my projections. "These numbers are ambitious." "These numbers are conservative," I corrected. "I've been holding back for 15 years because Orlando couldn't handle me outshining him. I'm done holding back." He looked up at me, and there was something in his expression I couldn't quite read. Respect, maybe? Or recognition. One ambitious person seeing another. "Then let's get to work," he said. "The thing about revenge, real revenge, not the movie kind, is that it doesn't end with a dramatic confrontation. It continues in 1,000 small moments that remind everyone involved exactly how the power structure shifted." Monday afternoon, I was in my office reviewing the Mercer Industries contract when my assistant knocked. "Celeste, there's a Bryn Matthews here. She doesn't have an appointment, but she says it's urgent." I looked up from my laptop. "Send her in." Bryn walked into my office looking like she'd aged 5 years and 72 hours. No makeup, hair in a messy ponytail, wearing jeans and a Georgia State sweatshirt. This was not the polished paralegal who'd been parading around the office in Tory Burch flats and designer blouses that my husband had definitely paid for. Mrs. Caldwell. Ms. Mercer, I corrected. I'm reverting to my maiden name. What can I do for you, Bryn? She stood there, wringing her hands like a character in a Victorian novel. I need my job back. I sat back in my chair and studied her. She couldn't have been more than 28, maybe 29. Young enough to think a middle-aged lawyer in a Porsche was exciting. Old enough to know better. Your employment was terminated for cause, I said. Falsifying timesheets is grounds for immediate dismissal. I'm not sure what you expected coming here. I know what I did was wrong. The timesheet thing, that was Orlando's idea. He said it was normal, that everyone did it. Everyone doesn't embezzle from their firm, Bryn. That's actually pretty specific to Orlando. I picked up my pen, went back to my contract review. If there's nothing else, please. Her voice cracked. I moved here from Valdosta 2 years ago. I don't have family in Atlanta. I got evicted from my apartment because it was in the firm's name, and I can't afford rent anywhere else. I've been sleeping in my car. I looked up. She was crying now, mascara-free tears streaming down her face. Part of me, the part that had watched this woman flirt with my husband at office parties for 2 years, felt nothing. But another part, the part that remembered being a 26-year-old first-year associate terrified of making rent, felt something uncomfortably close to sympathy. Bryn, I can't give you your job back. Even if I wanted to, which I don't, it would look like I'm condoning what happened. But I can give you a referral to a legal staffing agency downtown. They place paralegals. You're qualified. You just need someone to vouch for your skills. She looked up, surprised. You'd do that? I'd do that for the version of you who was a competent paralegal before she decided to sleep with a married partner. I wrote down a name and number on my notepad, tore it off, handed it to her. Tell them Celeste Mercer referred you. Don't mention Caldwell and Associates. And Bryn, next time a married man tells you everyone's committing fraud, get a second opinion. She took the paper, nodded, and left without saying anything else. After she was gone, Thea, who'd apparently been lurking in the hallway, poked her head in. Did you just help Orlando's mistress? I helped a 28-year-old woman who made catastrophically bad decisions and is now homeless. There's a difference. You're either a saint or a sadist. I haven't decided which. Can't I be both? Tuesday brought more entertainment. Orlando's lawyer, not anyone from our firm obviously, sent over a counter-proposal to my divorce terms. He wanted 50% of everything, including my retirement accounts, and he wanted to claim the house was marital property despite it being in my name from an inheritance. I read the proposal twice, then called Petra. He's delusional, she said after I read her the highlights. The house was your grandmother's. It's separate property. He has no claim to it. I know that. You know that. Apparently Orlando's attorney doesn't know that, which tells me he hired someone cheap. Or desperate. Nobody good is going to represent him after what happened. Should I counter-offer, or just let him drown? Counter with your original terms and a deadline. 48 hours to accept, or you start filing complaints with the bar. I spent Tuesday afternoon drafting the response with Petra, then sent it off with a certified mail requirement. Orlando would have to sign for it, which meant he'd have physical proof that his time was running out. Wednesday, Griffin and I had lunch with a potential client, a healthcare startup looking to acquire 3 urgent care clinics in the metro area. The meeting went well. Great, actually. The CEO, a woman named Simone, was impressed with our acquisition strategy and our timeline projections. As we were leaving the restaurant, she pulled me aside. I have to ask, are you the Celeste Mercer whose husband just imploded his own law firm? My stomach dropped. Word travels fast. I'm in 3 different professional women's groups on Facebook. It's been the only topic of conversation for 4 days. She smiled. For what it's worth, I think you're a genius. The way you handled that whole situation, that's exactly the kind of strategic thinking I want representing my company. We signed the retainer agreement Thursday morning. $200,000 in projected fees over the next 6 months. Griffin walked into my office after the client left, grinning. We just landed the biggest deal this firm's seen in 2 years. We're going to land 10 more by Christmas, I said. Get used to winning. Thursday afternoon, the twins came home for the weekend again. They'd decided to make it a regular thing until the divorce was finalized, which I appreciated even though I didn't want them to feel like they had to choose sides. Except they'd already chosen sides, which became clear when Maren showed me her phone over dinner. "Dad's been texting us," she said. "A lot." I looked at the messages. 12 texts from Orlando in 3 days, all variations on the same theme. "Your mother manipulated everyone. Your mother destroyed my career. Your mother is vindictive and cruel." "What did you say back?" I asked. "I blocked him," Brooks said, "after he called you a gold digger. Because apparently the woman who built his entire firm is a gold digger. We told him we'd talk to him again when he stops acting like a child," Maren added. "Which, based on this trajectory, might be never. I should have told them not to cut off their father. I should have encouraged them to maintain a relationship with him despite everything. But honestly, I was tired of being the bigger person. I appreciate you too," I said instead. "More than you know." Friday morning, Orlando's 48-hour deadline expired. He hadn't signed the divorce agreement. He hadn't even responded. So I called Petra and told her to file everything. The bar complaints, the civil suit for return of embezzled funds, the divorce petition with my original terms as the only offer on the table. "You're sure?" Petra asked. "Once we file with the bar, there's no taking it back." "I'm sure. He had his chance to do this quietly. He chose chaos. Then let's give him chaos." The complaints were filed by noon. By 3 p.m., my phone was ringing. Orlando, of course. I answered on the 4th ring. "Yes? You filed bar complaints against me? Celeste, they're going to suspend my license. You embezzled from your own firm, Orlando. What did you think was going to happen? They were going to give you a stern talking to and send you on your way? I made a mistake. I was going to pay it back." "Over what timeline?" "Because you've had 2 years to pay it back, and instead you bought Bryn a car." He was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was different. Smaller. "What do you want from me?" "I want you to sign the divorce agreement. I want you to accept responsibility for what you did. And I want you to stop telling our children that I'm the villain in this story. They won't even talk to me." "That's not my problem, Orlando. That's a consequence of your choices. Sign the papers. Take accountability. Maybe eventually they'll forgive you." "Will you?" The question caught me off guard. I thought about it. Really thought about it. Would I ever forgive Orlando for the affair, the lies, the embezzlement, the public humiliation? "I don't know," I said honestly. "But I know I'll never forget. Sign the papers, Orlando." I hung up before he could respond. Saturday morning, the signed divorce agreement arrived via courier. Orlando had agreed to everything. Every term, every clause, every condition. He'd even included a handwritten note. "I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything, but it's true." I read the note once, then put it in my desk drawer. Maybe someday I'd need to remember that he'd apologized. Today wasn't that day. Griffin stopped by the house Saturday afternoon with champagne and Chinese takeout. "Hugh told me the divorce papers came through. Figured you'd want to celebrate." "You just wanted an excuse to see the house," I said, but I let him in. We ate lo mein on the back porch while he admired the view of the garden. "This is nice. Really nice. No wonder you fought for it. My grandmother left me this house. Orlando thought he could claim it because we'd been married long enough. He was wrong about a lot of things, including underestimating you." I looked at Griffin. He was younger than me by almost 10 years, successful in his own right, ambitious enough to keep up with my plans for the firm. And he was looking at me like I was something worth paying attention to. "Are you flirting with me?" I asked. "Would that be inappropriate?" "Probably. You're my business partner." "True." He took a sip of champagne. "But I'm also someone who thinks you're remarkable, and I figured now that the divorce is final, it might be okay to mention that." I considered this. Considered him. Considered the possibility that maybe, just maybe, there was something interesting waiting on the other side of this mess. "Ask me again in 6 months," I said, "after we've hit our revenue targets." "Deal," he said, and smiled. 6 months later, I'm sitting in my office, the corner office, the one that used to be Orlando's, reviewing quarterly reports when Griffin knocks on my door with 2 glasses of champagne. We did it. he says, setting one glass on my desk. Revenue's up 147%. We just became the third highest grossing mid-market firm in Atlanta. I look at the numbers he's showing me. He's right. We didn't just hit our targets, we demolished them. Guess I should have fired Orlando years ago, I say, and Griffin laughs. The firm, officially rebranded as Mercer Tate and Associates 3 months ago, is unrecognizable from what it was. We've brought in 12 new clients, hired 4 associates, and just opened a satellite office in Buckhead. The same Buckhead neighborhood where Bryn used to live in that firm-funded apartment, actually. The irony isn't lost on me. Hugh stops by as I'm packing up for the day. Celeste, got a minute? Always. What's up? I wanted to thank you, he says, and he looks genuinely emotional. When all that went down with Orlando, I thought the firm was finished. I thought we'd lose clients, lose reputation, lose everything. Instead, we're thriving. That's because of you. It's because of all of us, I say, but I appreciate the sentiment. No, it's because you had the guts to do what needed to be done. Orlando was dragging us down for years, and none of us wanted to admit it. He pauses. For what it's worth, I'm sorry we didn't see it sooner. After he leaves, I sit there for a moment thinking about Orlando. I haven't seen him since that Saturday 6 months ago when he signed the divorce papers. I heard through Lawson that he's working at a small personal injury firm in Marietta now, taking whatever cases he can get while he waits to see if the bar is going to suspend his license. The hearing's next month. Bryn, according to LinkedIn, is working as a paralegal at a workers' comp firm in Duluth. She never used the referral I gave her. Can't say I'm surprised. The twins are doing well. Marin made Dean's List last semester and decided to add a minor in women's studies, which she says is directly inspired by watching you destroy Dad's entire career. Brooks is talking about law school, which terrifies and thrills me in equal measure. They've started speaking to Orlando again. Supervised visits, mostly lunches where he apologizes a lot and they nod politely. I'm glad. They need a relationship with their father, even if it looks different now. My phone buzzes. Text from Thea. Wine night at my place? I have gossip about Judith. I smile. My ex-mother-in-law's HOA drama has become legendary. After her Facebook post imploded spectacularly, she tried to run for HOA president and lost by a landslide. Apparently, accusing your daughter-in-law of being a vindictive gold digger while your son's embezzlement case is public record isn't a winning campaign strategy. I text back, be there at 7, bringing the good stuff. As I'm leaving the office, I run into Griffin in the parking garage. He's leaning against his car, clearly waiting for me. So, he says, it's been 6 months. I'd forgotten about that conversation. The one where I told him to ask me again in 6 months after we hit our revenue targets. It has been 6 months. I agree. And we hit our targets. We exceeded them, actually. So? He takes a step closer. Dinner? Somewhere that's not a business meeting? Somewhere where we can talk about things that aren't client acquisition strategies? I think about it. Really think about it. Griffin's smart, ambitious, age-appropriate, and he's never once underestimated me. He's also been nothing but professional for 6 months, while clearly wanting to be something else. You know what? I say. Yes, dinner sounds good. His smile is worth every second of those 6 months of waiting. That night, after dinner with Griffin, which was surprisingly easy and comfortable and made me remember that I'm 42, not dead, I come home to my house that I fought for, that my grandmother left me, that represents everything I built without Orlando's help. I pour myself a glass of wine and sit on the back porch looking at the garden. My phone has 17 unread messages, 3 contract drafts that need review, and a reminder that I'm speaking at the Georgia Bar Convention next month about corporate acquisitions. This is my life now. Successful, busy, complicated, mine. Someone once told me that the best revenge is living well. I used to think that was bullshit. One of those inspirational poster platitudes that sounds good but means nothing. Turns out it's completely true. I'm not going to lie and say I don't think about Orlando sometimes. Wonder if he regrets it. Wonder if he realizes what he lost. Wonder if Bryn was worth $340,000 and a ruined career. But mostly, I don't think about him at all. Because here's what I learned from the whole catastrophic mess. I don't need to be married to be successful. I don't need to be underestimated to be strategic. And I definitely don't need a man who thinks golf is billable work. What I need is exactly what I have: a thriving firm, incredible kids, loyal friends, and the satisfaction of knowing that when someone tried to destroy me, I turned around and built an empire from the wreckage. The twins have started calling what happened the Capitol Grill coup, like it's some kind of historical event. Maybe it is. Maybe the night my husband announced his affair in front of 75 people was the night I stopped being Orlando Caldwell's wife and started being Celeste Mercer, the lawyer who took over Atlanta's corporate acquisition market and made it look easy. My phone buzzes one more time. Text from Marin. Mom, Brooks and I are coming home this weekend. Can we bring friends? They want to meet the Savage Queen. I laugh and text back. The Savage Queen has leftover lasagna and a story you can't put on TikTok. Because that's the other thing I learned. You can survive your marriage ending in spectacular public fashion. You can survive betrayal and embezzlement and becoming the subject of suburban gossip. You can survive all of it and come out the other side stronger, sharper, and significantly wealthier. Sometimes karma needs a little help. Sometimes justice requires a forensic audit and a majority stake in your husband's law firm. And sometimes, the best revenge isn't just living well, it's living well while sitting in your ex-husband's office, running his firm better than he ever did, and watching your quarterly profits increase by 147%. Not that I'm keeping score or anything. Okay, I'm totally keeping score. And I'm winning.